Failure. It's a word that can sting, can bring you to your knees. Imagine facing it, not once, but 100 times. 100 doors slammed shut, 100 dreams deferred. It would be easy to give up, to believe it's just not meant to be. But what if, after all those falls, there was one last chance? What if that 101st try was the one that changed everything? This is the story of a man who refused to let failure be the end. A man who discovered that true strength isn't in never falling, but in rising, always, one more time. The weight of unfulfilled dreams. He carried the quiet ache of dreams left to wither. Each missed opportunity, each path not taken, settled like dust on his spirit, a heavy cloak woven from the threads of what might have been. The silence of his regrets was deafening, a constant hum beneath the surface of his everyday life. He saw the vibrant colors of his aspirations fade to muted grays, the bold outlines blurred by the passage of time and the sting of failure. He would replay scenarios in his mind, the triumphant moments he'd envisioned, the applause that never came, the recognition that remained a phantom limb. This weight was not a sudden burden, but a slow accumulation, a gradual dimming of his inner light. There were days when the sheer magnitude of it threatened to crush him. He'd look at others, their lives seemingly unfolding with effortless grace, and a pang of envy, sharp and unwelcome, would pierce through him. He'd remember the thrill of starting, the boundless optimism that fueled his initial steps, only to recall the stumbles, the miscalculations, the doors that slammed shut with a finality that echoed in his bones. It wasn't just the big dreams that haunted him, but the small ones too, the simple desires for connection, for peace, for a sense of belonging, all seemingly out of reach. The world kept spinning, indifferent to the silent battles he fought within himself, the constant struggle against the specter of his own perceived inadequacy. Yet, deep within that weary soul, a tiny ember of defiance flickered. It was the memory of that initial spark, the raw courage it took to even try. He began to see that the weight wasn't just the burden of failure, but also the testament to his bravery in daring to dream at all. He realized that the act of reaching, of striving, held its own inherent value, independent of the outcome. The unfulfilled dreams, though painful, were also proof of a life lived with intention, of a heart that dared to hope. Slowly, tentatively, he started to reframe his narrative. The failures were not endpoints, but lessons etched into his being. The weight, he understood, was not meant to break him, but to ground him, to teach him resilience. He began to appreciate the quiet strength that had carried him through each disappointment, the unwavering spirit that refused to be extinguished. He learned that, even in the shadow of what was lost, new possibilities could bloom, nurtured by the wisdom gained from every fall. The man who had failed 100 times discovered that the greatest victory lay not in achieving every dream, but in finding the courage to keep dreaming and living anyway. The echo of every setback. Each failure was a stone thrown, shattering the fragile surface of his dreams. The man who failed 100 times knew this echo intimately. It wasn't a sound, not really, but a deep resonance within his very bones, a constant hum of what could have been, of roads not taken, of doors that slammed shut. He remembered the sting of the first rejection, the polite dismissal that felt like a physical blow. Then came the harsher ones, the outright refusals that left him reeling, questioning his own worth. The echo grew with each attempt, a chorus of doubt whispering in the quiet moments. It was in the empty mailbox, the unanswered phone calls, the averted gazes of those who once offered encouragement. This echo was a heavy cloak, threatening to smother the last embers of his ambition. Yet, within that relentless chorus, a different note began to emerge. It was subtle at first, a faint countermelody to the symphony of his setbacks. He noticed patterns in his failures, not as signs of his inadequacy, but as lessons etched in the harsh light of experience. The 100th attempt wasn't just another echo, it was a culmination of 99 distinct insights. He learned to read the subtle cues, to anticipate the pitfalls, to adapt his approach with a wisdom forged in the crucible of disappointment. The echo, once a harbinger of despair, transformed into a teacher, its resonance now a reminder of resilience, a testament to his refusal to be silenced. The weight of those 100 failures began to shift. It was no longer a burden dragging him down, but a foundation upon which he could build something stronger. He understood that each setback, each moment of profound discouragement, had stripped away the superficial and revealed the core of his determination. The echo of every failure became the rhythm of his persistence. It was the steady beat that kept him moving forward, even when the path ahead was obscured by doubt. He realized that true strength wasn't in never falling, but in the unwavering resolve to rise, each time a little wiser, a little more determined, carrying the echo not as a scar, but as a badge of honor. Finding strength in the ashes. The smoke had barely cleared, an acrid reminder of dreams turned to dust. Each failure, a brick in the wall of his despair, had chipped away at his spirit until only a hollow echo remained. He'd poured his lifeblood into ventures that crumbled, watched his carefully laid plans disintegrate like sandcastles against a relentless tide. The weight of 100 defeats pressed down, a suffocating blanket he couldn't shake off. It felt like the end, a definitive, crushing finality. He saw the pity in the eyes of those who knew him, a silent acknowledgement of his brokenness. Yet, amidst the smoldering ruins of his ambition, a flicker of defiance ignited. It was a tiny spark, barely perceptible, but it was there. He saw not just the wreckage, but the lessons etched into every charred beam and shattered pane. He remembered the tenacity of the phoenix, rising from its own pyre. This wasn't about reclaiming what was lost, but about forging something entirely new from the very embers of his downfall. The pain, once a paralyzing force, began to transform into a fuel, a potent source of raw, unyielding resolve. He began to sift through the debris, not with sorrow, but with purpose. Each setback, each misstep, was a data point, a piece of knowledge gained at a steep price. He started to see the patterns, the subtle flaws in his approach, the external forces he had underestimated. This introspection, born of utter devastation, was a brutal but necessary surgery. He wasn't the same man who had started this journey. The fire had refined him, stripped away the arrogance and the naivete, leaving behind a core of pure, unadulterated grit. From this crucible of failure, a new strength emerged. It wasn't the boisterous confidence of youth, but a quiet, unshakable resilience. He understood now that true victory wasn't in avoiding the fall, but in the courage to rise, again and again, with a clearer vision and a stronger will. The ashes were not an ending, but a foundation, a testament to the enduring power of the human spirit to rebuild, to learn, and to ultimately triumph over adversity. The dawn of a new beginning. The first rays of a hesitant sun peeked over the jagged horizon, painting the bruised sky with hues of rose and gold. It was a stark contrast to the long, oppressive night that had just ended. For the man who had stumbled through 100 failures, this wasn't just another sunrise, it was a promise whispered on the wind. Each breath he took felt cleaner, lighter, as if the very air had shed the weight of past defeats. He stood on the precipice, not of despair, but of a vast, uncharted territory of possibility. The path behind him was littered with the debris of broken dreams and shattered expectations. Yet, looking forward, he saw not an insurmountable wall, but a wide-open field, waiting to be cultivated. He remembered the sting of each misstep, the hollow echo of doors slammed shut. There was the failed business venture, the abandoned artistic pursuit, the relationships that withered under the strain of his relentless pursuit and subsequent disappointments. Each setback had felt like a definitive end, a nail in the coffin of his ambitions. He had internalized the narrative of his own inadequacy, a silent, gnawing certainty that he was simply not built for success. The weight of those 100 times had pressed down, threatening to crush the very spirit that dared to dream. But something had shifted in the deep, quiet hours before dawn. It wasn't a sudden epiphany, but a slow, dawning realization that the failures were not endpoints, but rather signposts. They had illuminated the wrong turns, highlighted the faulty assumptions, and carved a deeper understanding of the terrain. This new beginning wasn't about erasing the past, but about building upon its hard-won lessons. He understood now that the true measure of a person isn't in never falling, but in the courage to rise, to learn, and to try again, with a wisdom forged in the fires of adversity. This dawn was an invitation. An invitation to step out of the shadows of what was and into the brilliant light of what could be. The fear was still there, a faint tremor in his hands, but it was now dwarfed by a burgeoning sense of resolve. He would not be defined by his failures, but by his unwavering commitment to the dawn of a new beginning. For in the end, the greatest success is not in achieving a perfect record, but in the persistent, unyielding belief in the power of a fresh start. He tried. He failed. Again and again. 100 times, the dream slipped through his fingers. The world told him to quit, to settle. But deep inside, a flicker refused to die. It whispered of one more chance. And then, on that last, desperate attempt, something shifted. A tiny crack of light. He pushed, he strained, he poured everything he had into that single moment. And it broke open. Success, not with a bang, but with a quiet, profound dawn. It wasn't about the failures, but about the refusal to let them define him. It's the fire in your belly, the courage to stand up one more time, that truly matters. What if that one more chance is just around the corner for you too? Don't let the fear of falling stop you from reaching for the stars. Next time, we'll explore the incredible power of resilience and how to bounce back stronger than ever.